Why do I not have my shoes on? Tell me this again, because it's really smart.
Well, for me, there's two things. One is when I chew gum, I get attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And when I have my shoes on, I have the tendency to get a little ego. But if I take my shoes off, I can't really have ego because it grounds me completely. And so when I have people take their shoes off, you see a completely different side of them.
What's the TV show? It was Mad Men. You remember Mad Men? The boss on the top floor, he'd make people take their shoes off.
I never saw that.
Oh my gosh, Mad Men was so amazing. But yeah, he'd make them take their shoes off before they went in. And it was this thing, they're like, we have to take his name was Bert, I think.
Yeah.
And he was this really eccentric dude, but he made you take your shoes off to have a meeting with him. And I wonder if that had something to do with it.
I'm watching Suits right now. So some people would make references between the two. But I've been watching Suits. So.
I can drop a name. I went to college with the guy in Suits, Gabriel Macht.
No way.
Yeah, I did some things with him at Kate. No, this is like not.
This is
This is PG. Yeah, I guess it's Harvey. I've never watched the show.
You've never watched the show?
Maybe once or twice. But
Okay.
I went to college with him, and we sort of hung out. He was a friend.
You knew Harvey?
Yeah, I did. And when he showed up, it was Carnegie Mellon, before I went to where I ended up graduating from. He had like really long hair, like as long as yours, but straight, long blonde hair. All the girls literally loved him. I mean, it was like there was someone who posted a sign saying, "I want this man," and they just put it up all over the campus. And everybody knew he was going to be a big deal because he was studying acting, and he's pretty attractive.
Now that my wife knows, well, she'll know that you know Harvey. She's gonna. I mean, she might like you a bit more.
I have not spoken to him since I was like 21.
It doesn't matter. The fact that you do know him.
Yeah.
You
That's
know
pretty
what I mean?
cool.
And I can fudge all those things.
Yeah.
Because you guys hung out yesterday.
What? Oh, yeah, we did.
Yeah.
Totally. Well, when you say you guys, me and somebody hung out. It might not have been Harvey, but yeah. Okay, I got a question for you.
Okay.
I know you really well. You were like one of my better friends. We've only known each other a couple of years, but what's with the dreadlocks? I mean, tell me the story of the dreadlocks, because you are not like from, well, I'm going to say something. It sounds like racial, but you're not from Jamaica. You know what I mean? You're half Mexican, half not Mexican.
Yeah, half white.
But okay, white. I'm all white. I'm literally the whitest. Watch me dance. But no, tell me up the hair.
So the dreadlocks happened on accident, just like everything else in my life. Mm-hmm. And this was a thing we were talking about in men's group this morning, where I said, like, you spoke life to me, and you said, it's not going to be an it's just going to happen. And I had my hair permed on pipe cleaners because I wanted to look like Maxwell.
I think you're like the painter. What's that guy, Paint by Numbers
Bob
dude?
Ross.
Did you look like him? Was it like him?
Okay. I wanted to look like Maxwell, which is the sexiest man alive.
Okay.
I ended up looking like a cross between Bob Ross and Greg Brady. So at the time though, I thought, oh wow, I'm looking like Maxwell, these things. Well, I went on a trip to China. It's about 14 hours from San Francisco to, we landed in, help me with this,
Shanghai, Hong Kong.
We landed in Hong Kong.
I can't wait to know how you got from China to dreadlocks.
Okay.
This is like
So I went there. I had this huge afro, and on the way back, it's 14 hours. Well, I read as much as I could, books. Then I read magazines. Then I watched movies. But I was so bored. And when I get tired and I can't sleep, I just rub my head. And I started rubbing my head, and it started knotting up in the back. And then I stopped myself. I was like, oh, man, most white guys with dreads only have like 4 of them.
Right.
So I thought, there's no way I'm going to do that. And then I thought, if I'm going to do it, they got to stay skinny. They got to stay small. So I just kept rubbing my head, and it happened on accident. And that accident then became my brand later on.
That's crazy. No, that's funny. I mean, if I tried to rub my head, I don't think many dreadlocks would come out.
We're working on that, though.
Well, no, but it's funny how my haircut derives from my past. Your haircut, in a sense, also, and it's not, we call it a cut. But no, I've always wanted to ask you that, and I never really knew. I mean, because your symbol is dreadlocks, your head is dreadlocks. I think if you cut your hair like mine, I might not recognize you.
A lot of people wouldn't. I mean, and Andrew is in the studio here. Actually, right behind him, if he looks, there's a shirt on a little box that is the beginning of my logo. And it was a shirt that my brother got from Jamaica, like you said, and while he was on his wedding honeymoon. And he had bought it. And at the time, I didn't have a job. I had just got fired from my job. And he gave me the shirt. It says Rasta Man. It's a little stick figure that has dreads on it. And that's where the logo derived from.
That's funny. What I said earlier was not exactly that, but that was said. I don't think I can take credit for it. What I said was, in my life, the things that I've sort of done by accident are the most successful things that have ever happened to me. The things that I really try hard for are the things I've failed at. And it's sort of exactly the opposite of what you'd expect. So that's what I said. Someone else said that. I wish I could take credit for it, but that was what I was talking about this morning.
No, but you did say this.
And so
to
what I'm
me.
saying is, like, your hair was starting to happen by accident, and now it's a brand.
Well,
brand, is that a right word?
I would say, yeah,
Okay.
it did. But that was, again, the thing. I never focused on brand, but then a guy asked me about branding, and I never thought about it. And then I actually broke it down for him, and I broke down all the components of it, but it wasn't, I didn't have this broken down and I followed the thing. I just looked back at what I had done, and then I was able to reverse engineer it.
You know, I remember when I was on Pawn Stars, I had this jacket that by like episode 3 I was wearing, because I remember Mark Hall Patton he's the guy in the black hat and the beard. And I'm like, well, I need an image. So I got this jacket, and it's funny, if I don't put the jacket, when I was on all the time, if I didn't wear the jacket in public, no one recognized me. If I put the jacket on, everybody knew who I was. Here's my question for you. How would it feel for you? Not that you should or anything like that, but if you cut your hair off, I mean, close your mind and just think, if Kelly went into a barber and ended up looking like me, what would that be like?
I went through it one time because I was very known for having an afro.
Right.
And I remember going into the shower one time, and I took a razor with me, just a straight razor, and I cut off all my hair in the shower. And when I did, God led me to do it, and he told me, I want you to cut it off, and I cut it off, and I was freaked out at first. And what he said, I am your identity. Your hair is not, but for a while, your hair has been your identity. When you walked into the place, people knew you from that. I want them to know you from my spirit. And so you're going to go through this time of not having any hair to understand that I'm the one that they need to focus on. And so when it's time, I'm okay. I got a weird shaped head though. So
So do I.
And my
Literally
kids,
ridiculous.
I've asked my daughter only knows me with dreads. So she thinks she thinks you're the weird one. My kids think you're the weird one.
Well, your
'cause you
son's
have
got the
short
same
hair.
haircut you have. So like, I don't know why everybody in your family doesn't
He's
have
got
dreadlocks.
he's got a cooler one.
Yeah, he does. Your son's pretty cool. Okay, so if you cut your hair, it's almost like in my life, God is constantly breaking down idols. Whatever is an idol for me is what generally crumbles the most. Yeah. And I'm thinking, someday, if hair becomes your identity, God's going to make you cut it off, or you're going to, get into a gas explosion and it's going to burn off or something like that,
Well,
But
I hope that doesn't
no, I
happen,
hope it doesn't
Craig.
happen either, literally. No.
You know what just happened to me on my bike ride to pick up Maddox is I was riding my electric bike, and I only had two bars left, and I was on the way to get him. Well, it's a little bit of a way back, so I was trying to conserve as much energy as possible. And I was riding, and I was probably about 25 miles an hour, and I was just going pretty smooth, and I was like, this is pretty easy. I'm going up the hill. I dropped my power down to 2, and I realized how hard it was to pedal up that hill without the power assist. But I was so used to the power assist. And what God spoke to me in that moment, he said, that's how you are with me. A lot of times you get going so fast and you don't realize that it's me. But if I take my power away from you, you won't even be able to make it up this hill.
You'll crumble. That's what I find. It's like, what's the best position for a human being? On his or her knees, right? Well, if you try to hold the world up, you will crumble. You will fall to your knees. So it's like whenever I try to hold the world up, I generally fall to my knees, and it's exactly where God wants me. He's like, I want you on your knees, so go ahead, try to hold the world up and see what happens.
When's the last time that you were put on your knees mandatorily, like where he did it, where he cut your knees out?
It literally happens like every day. I mean, I have usually a humble moment every day when I think I can fix something that I can't fix. And it really does, it's regular for me because my life seems a defining moment. It might speak to my, I guess my stubbornness or my belief. Okay, A-type personality, strong people, we think we can do anything, but we can't. And I will tell you the most humbling I ever got in a minute, but I find every day I'm failing at something, some things more than others, and it's constantly a humbling moment. So, but the thing that really humbled me the most was when I was trying to have my son with my then wife. We couldn't get pregnant. I'm like, it was impossible. And I think God was telling me, no matter how much money you throw at IVF, it's not going to work for you until I decide I'm ready. And literally when I gave up and said, listen, this is something all human beings can do and I can't seem to do it. And no matter what I do, it's beyond my power. That's when Reese was conceived.
How do you reconcile that, though? How do you, I mean, because you're a powerful guy, you're massively intelligent. We're sitting in the studio right now that, honestly, I said I had a concept, and you're an action taker. You just said to me, tell me when to go. And when I told you when to go, literally 5 hours later, I think, Heather was here.
Well, you know,
how do you deal with it?
Well, here's the thing. We all have stumbling blocks. And some of us have stumbling blocks that other people don't have. And I think God puts two people together where they complement each other. And there's stuff I could never do that you do every day by naturally, okay? So that's the only thing I can make. I'm like an action person, like trying to do action things. And like literally, do you hear that stuff in the background? It's that's messy. And I love it. That would normally get on my, you know what I mean? But I'm like, don't worry. There's people talking in the background. We'll get used to it, you know? But I think it's when two people, and that's like a marriage too. It's like one person's good at one thing, one person's good at another thing. And it's so I'm sort of babbling, but it's like, I don't take credit for this. You know, we're sitting in this chair because of you. It's not because I got a contractor in here to get things started.
Yeah, but you called me, and it was literally like, I remember us
I know exactly where I was driving. I'm like, you say go, and we're going tomorrow morning.
Go, and we're going to
Heather's
go.
Here. Yeah.
And I was skittish, man. Like at first I was kind of skittish, and I knew your action personality. And so I wasn't even going to say maybe until I was, and even when I said go, I still took a breath. And now I sit here and I'm like, dude, this is.
And it's not perfect, but it's awesome.
Oh, dude.
And that's the thing, is not perfect. You ever heard the expression, the perfect is the enemy of the good? You see, you go for perfection, you never get anywhere. But if you go for good, perfection may or may not come, but you're gonna be here. You know, the lighting might not be perfect, the sound might not be perfect, but we're here doing this. If we waited for the perfect, we'd never do anything. You know, and so that's sort of been it's like when I was in the Marine Corps. That's what I like. Don't just do something. I think I don't know who it was. He said, something done swiftly and good is better than the perfect thing never done at all. Yeah. So, you know, that's it for me. Hey, you did something for me the other day. You cut my son's hair. And I another thing, as well as I know you, I didn't really get, I mean, you said I'm the guy who makes hair short. That's what you said you did. And I watched you do something completely different with a 12-year-old. And tell me about that. How did you get started cutting hair?
Double wide mobile home in a bathroom is how, well, that was the iteration. The first iteration was trying to shave the dog. And, you know, my dad said, you know, I'll buy clippers and we'll save money on shaving the dog. We tried to do it. We didn't chain the dog up. The dog runs away. We realized that you got to chain a dog up to shave it. And then we put the clippers away. My buddy Will, still my best friend to this day, needed a haircut. We were in a double wide mobile home in the bathroom. My brother cut one side, but the guard had broken. So we just duct taped it as opposed to getting new ones because we couldn't afford a new one. And we had it duct taped on, and he handed me the clippers on the other side because it's tight in that bathroom. And I didn't see that the guard had fell off. And when it fell off, I just ran it up the side of his head. Well, one side was the guard, and the other side was bald. So we didn't know what to do. And so we just shaved a line around his head, and there was no fade to it. We didn't know how to blend. And it looked like a big brick of cheese on top of his head. And
sort of like my head.
My best friend Will is mixed black and white. So his mom was the white one, his dad was the black one, and they took and said, like, she would always have the best hairdresser in town, black hairdresser, come to their house to take care of their hair. Well, when I did this was a major thing. In my head, I was like, well, I just shaved his head around, and he looks like a brick of cheese. He'll get over it. His mom wanted to take me to the woodshed, and she was my second mom, so she was allowed to. So, but that really, everything that has ever happened in my life has been by accident. It has never been that I'm setting out to be a hairdresser.
I'm going to have a podcast.
No, it just happened, like these things. And when I flow in those places, like when I just allow it to flow, then it moves. But I use the principle of my pops when I went to hair school. My pops and my mom always said, just be the best at what you can be. Don't compare yourself to anyone, but just be the best you can be, and we'll support you 100%. Okay. So that's what I wanted an iteration. Every time I did a haircut, I wanted to be a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better.
But it's not just about cutting hair. And I learned that watching you cut my son's hair. Because if it was just making people's hair short, which is what you said you do, I know it's like tongue in cheek. You know you do more than that. But if it was that, I don't think you would have stuck with it. Am I right or am I wrong?
I think you're absolutely right.
Would you have found something else?
Well, it's crazy. I simplify it. I oversimplify sometimes because I think like I sweep up hair off the floor, and I did that for 30 years. We've since sold the salons and everything like that, but doing that, I would look at the hair on the floor and I would say, by me sweeping this up and making someone's hair shorter, my kids have a completely different life than if I didn't make hair shorter.
Right. Makes sense.
But when you talk about it, there's 4 components to it. Number 1 is the connection point with the guest or with your son. I had to connect with him. He's 12, right?
Yeah.
So at 12 years old, I could see that he was scared. Mm-hmm. I could see that he was scared, and he had times in the past where he wasn't super happy with what someone did. Right. So I had to connect with him. So we connected about gaming. I connected with him on kicking you out of the room.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally left. I knew I was not invited.
Your dad is not here. Yeah. It's just you and me, Reese. High five. We're on the same team.
Right.
And then we went through, and once I connected with him, then I wanted to hear his desires. Mm-hmm. Now, some of his desires didn't align with his hair texture, which was the third part of it. Right. So I assessed his hair texture after I heard his desires. And then after that, the 4th component was I gave my professional recommendation. And so when you run down that line, and it's not just this, I have to do this, it's something that came natural because, and even through the time, there was times during the haircut that you didn't see that he physically got uncomfortable. Mm. And then I had to stop from cutting and start working on the heart. Oh, and then once I got the heart okay, then I was able to move back to the body. And then when I saw him go again, I had to move back into the heart, and then I would be able to do with the hands, show him all the techniques and why I was doing it. So I went from from his heart to his head to his hand to my hands. Mm-hmm. And so I had to connect on all different levels that way. And that's truly, for me, the great part of what I've been blessed to be able to do throughout my life.
You're like changing people from the inside by cutting their hair on the outside. And I didn't think that's possible. Because when I go get a haircut, I just want the haircut the way I want it. And I've never sat in a chair before and had someone do to me what you did to Reese. But I saw it, the brief moment I was allowed in the room. Mm-hmm. And it was incredible. And I think it's sort of like, it defines what you do. It's like when I saw the haircut and I saw what you were doing to him and I saw what he felt like when he left, it was like someone leaving our small group. It was like someone being blessed by you. And it wasn't because the haircut was awesome. It was awesome. No, that's expected from somebody, I think, who is a hairdresser. And instantly back to that, it's like going into it, not a lot of guys when they're kids want to say, I'm going to grow up and be a hairdresser, hair cutter, whatever.
Imagine in the military. My dad was in the military for 14 years.
That's like so counter, like everything.
Everything. And especially at the time. It was 1993.
Oh, yeah.
And so at that time, I mean, there's really only, women become hairdressers and guys, but the stereotype.
Yeah.
And it was hard during that time, a little bit, but I had the support of my friends. My brother, I believe, protected me. Mm-hmm. They made fun of everything else except that. He never allowed people, and he's never told me to this day, but he's my hero. But I believe at some point he had a conversation with all of our friends, and he said, you can make fun of his big head, his funny looks, all those things, but you can't touch that one. And I believe he protected me, and I've been protected throughout my life because I've always been the baby.
Interesting. Yeah. What gets you up in the morning? I mean, I say that. What gets you up in the morning? Obviously, because I got to take my kids to school, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
What actually gets you out of bed?
Well, it's 3 people: my wife, and my 2 kids, and that has become more solidified in the last couple of years. For years, I used to tell my brother all the time, I would be like, I'm changing the industry. I want to change the way that people look at the industry by the way that people act within the industry. And I wanted to change all these things. And my brother said, stop it. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, pardon my French. He said, the industry doesn't give a F about you. Yeah. He said, if you leave tomorrow, they'll never remember you. But those 3 people across the kitchen table from you will. And he said, once you start focusing on them, then your impact that you want to make in the world will be larger than anything you could ever imagine. And so, but I could tell you there different days is different things. Like this morning, dude, men's group, and we know people come, people go, some people show up, some people don't, whatever it is. Yeah. For me, dude, I woke up, I was on fire. I walked 2 miles before men's group because I was so excited. Mm-hmm. It pumped me up. So that's Tuesdays. On Monday, I love taking my kids to school.
Right.
And Wednesdays I get to take them to school, and then sometimes I get to pick them up. But again, sometimes it's like, just get to the beach. But my dad told me this. My pops said, I asked him, what do you ultimately want to do, Pop? And he said, I want to do exactly what God would have me to do. And I find when I'm in that space, things go amazing, but I'm not always in that space.
Yeah, no, it's a challenge. Okay, so here's another question. Do you think those people are talking too loud?
It's okay.
Is it sure? Okay, cool. Because I was like, shut up.
No, I've grown up in it, and my dad used to have. I don't know if I ever told you, but my dad used to work in India.
Mm-hmm. No.
And so in India, he sent me these tapes, and these tapes were sermons, and it was all spoken in Hindi. Or Hindu, or is it Hindi or Hindu?
Yes.
So yes.
Yes.
So it was spoken in that, and they would preach in that language, and then people would respond, yelling, screaming, all the stuff. And then there was a translator in English.
Super cool.
And I listened to these tapes, and literally, if I showed you this tape, it would drive you up the wall. But
is it like Bollywood?
Well, no, it was because it was two languages consistently yelling at the top of their lungs.
Right.
But what God told me at that time, he said, this is the world. This is me. The world will never stop. I need you to listen to me. And so he worked that muscle in me. And for probably a year and a half, I listened to those tapes probably 4 or 5 hours a day.
Wow.
And what it did was it created the muscle when I do hear background noise or anything like that. I'm able to just focus on you. And there was times, being a hairdresser for 30 years, there was times in a salon where everything would be crazy, chaotic, a lot of stuff going on, and I only had to give my attention to you, and I had to make sure that I was locked into you.
Okay, so you talk about India, my head, I got like ADD, so the noise bothers me, but I got to get over it. That's something I have to do. But do you know why cows sit in the middle of the road in India? This is a real reason.
Well, you tell me.
Well, no, it's really funny because first of all, they're not going to move the cows because they're sacred, but it's because there's no flies in traffic. The cows sit in traffic because there's no flies bothering them.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I don't know that's true. I have never talked to a cow, but I've talked to several Indian people, and they've said, yeah, that's why they do it. Because it's freeing. They don't have to bother with the flies.
Of course.
So they sit there all day. They go home to get milked and fed and whatever cows do when they're not keeping away from the flies. Yeah. That's interesting. Okay, so I asked you what gets you up in the morning. Yeah. What keeps you awake at night? Because there's generally, and someone asked a Marine general what keeps him awake at night, and he goes, nothing keeps me awake at night. I keep people awake at night. And I'm like, oh my God, I wish I'd said that.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that's what keeps
I had
you awake
something
at night?
like that.
But
at time, I think it's 4 different parts. I mean, there's times where it's financial.
Okay.
Right. And so, as men, we're providers, and, we look at those kind of things. And so some days it's financial. Some days it's the personal stuff. Like there was a time where we had a big challenge where we had, a lot of people come up against us in business at times, and that kept me up. And so it was the business part. And then there's some times where I know I did something wrong to a person or I didn't honor them. And so personally it keeps me up. But, those parts are, there's a song, it's called Joy Comes in the Morning. And I remember listening to that. My mom would always tell me I would be struggling at night because night is scary. Like, it was always scary for me. I was always scared of the dark as a kid, and it was always scary. But she would always tell me, joy comes in the morning, son. So if you could just make it through this, if you could just make it through the night, rest, joy will come in the morning. And when that light shines, that's when it's time. And so that was a thing that I hold on to a ton.
A lot of the stuff we talk about, they sound like cliches, right? Yeah. And yet the cliches have a lot of power, because as you're talking, I met this guy, he works at Whole Foods. I forget his name, but every time I see him, he's got a smile on his face. Yeah. And we started talking, and he goes, if you pray, why worry? And if you worry, why pray? Yeah. And so this is a guy who sleeps well at night, and he lives that. Cliches can be super annoying at times. Someone says a cliche to you, you're like, shut up.
It's like
leave me alone. Yeah, it's a bumper sticker. Yeah. Thank you for blessing me with bumper sticker wisdom. But it's like true. You know what I said? It's like it can either piss you off because you're upset or something, but it's true. If you pray, why worry? It's pointless. If you're worrying, why pray? It's all, and so when you said a cliche, and I'm like, I believe it, what you said.
Yeah.
I don't remember what it was, but.
Well, all the cliches for me, the cliches, unless they have a personal story to them, I can't get behind them.
Yeah.
And so the personal story of, like, literally my mama would say, like, Joey comes in the morning sun. And what I wanted to do, Craig, is I wanted to be like, whatever, Mom. Yeah. But now it's one of those things where I think my parents knew that they were checking out early. Mm. So I'm 48 now. My mom was 62 when she died. My dad was 68.
My parents checked out early too.
Right?
Yeah.
But I believe that my parents knew that they were leaving early. So they were dropping all these little gems for me because they knew I was going to spend most of my life without them.
Wow. That's pretty heavy. Heavy and awesome, that you get that. Now, what keeps me up at night?
What's that?
I find that what keeps me up at night, I've sometimes had struggles with, call it not the truth. It's not like it's being authentic and being truthful to myself and others around me. Yeah. And not creating a narrative to just slightly change perceptions. And that's just it. If I can make things just a little bit better, I'll do it. And it's not authentic, it's not honest, and it's not respectful to myself and to those around me. And it's a lesson I'm trying to learn. I'm still struggling with it. But the things I think that keep me up at night, sometimes the consequences of when I have not been truthful. When I have, and it's not like, yes, I didn't gamble the money away at the casino. That's not what I'm talking about. It's when you narrate a reality to fit your own needs and to sort of make yourself feel better, avoid consequences. And it's at night, now that I have faced that square on in the past couple of, even like, I say it's new for me. I'm still working on it, but that keeps me up.
You know what's wild about how God works is, our producer, Andrew, best in the business.
You make he is actually awesome.
He is.
But no, I got to stop you. Every person who stands next to you is really, truly, you make them feel, just like when you're cutting hair, you make me feel like a rock star every time I'm next to you.
Thank you.
No, so it's like you give that to me, and it's a gift. And you're calling things out that I think are objectively good about me, I guess. But you are so positive with that, and it just makes me want to be around you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So go ahead.
The cool thing is, though, Craig, is because I have such cool friends, and you know this, like I have really, really
you
cool
do
friends.
have a lot of cool friends.
Okay. So it enables me to literally tell the truth. Like the guy that I just introduced you to out here is a top personal trainer for professional, collegiate, and young athletes. But his professional, he doesn't talk about because, they're on such a level. When he finds out who you are in the media space, people freak out. Like literally, I just had a woman downstairs and I told her, I said, my buddy Craig, and she's like, oh, cool, Craig. And I said, did you ever watch Pawn Stars? And she's like, yes, it was one of my favorite shows. I said, the World War II weapons expert is going to be here. And she just flipped her lid. But I get to tell the truth. Now I promise you, I would never gas somebody up.
You're so tall and they're like 5'4".
Yeah. And I don't know what I was saying with the statement that you made. It's amazing how God works because Andrew, who's the producer here, him and I had a conversation today, and what his assignment was this week is to explore his beliefs and base them up against the truth of the Word of God. This is exactly what we talked about. And it's amazing because that's exactly what you were just talking about, but that's how God, I believe, works.
You said something earlier, too. You were talking about what gets you up in the morning, and it was your family and the impact you can make on them. And something that we've spoken about it, is that people often measure their success in volume. They measure it in quantity, okay? So if I don't have a podcast that has 6 million people, if I don't have a customer base of 500 people, if I haven't been a regimental commander with 1,200 people under me, that I'm leading, well, somehow I'm not successful. But if you just change one life, that's like throwing a rock into a pond, And I know because people have changed my life before, and I remember these people. And they've made a massive difference in my life, and as a result, to some degree, when I'm when I'm standing on my spot, that's when I say, when I'm on my spot, I am drawing from that. And what I wanted to tell you, and we had talked about earlier, is that you make the difference, a real difference in one person's life. Now, we hope it's your family, and you got your family, then you've got your friends, and then around that, you've got society. It's like rings, you know? So yeah, family comes first, but if you can like make a legitimate difference, and you're never sometimes even going to know that you did, you know, but you're going to change lives. And if you change one or two, man, you are massively successful.
Well, I struggled with that a lot. And even when you said what wakes you up, honestly, sometimes, Craig, it's not anything earth shattering. Sometimes it's like, dude, I can't wait to ride my electric bike. Sometimes I'm like, I can't wait to take my dog on a walk because she forces me to walk around the block and I need to stay healthy. You know what I'm saying? And that part has been a massive one for me. And not because, like, there's times where, like, the other day I went with a guy named Cole, you know, Cole from church, Andrew knows him. And I took him to a podcast studio. So we went to this podcast studio. It was on a podcast. It was amazing. We had so much fun. He connected with some people and it was great.
Right.
I'm on a high. Oh my gosh, the quantity thing. So I'm quantifying. Man, this is amazing, man.
I'm going to reach millions.
I get a text. The text is from my friend. Well, I had a guy who, very reputable guy, one of the most famous bands of all time. He's a drummer for it. She's best friends with him, so she was going to get him on the podcast. I was like, man, this is going to go be crazy. She texted me back and she said, hey, his PR agent and checked your stats, and they're not in line with the type of brands that they align with.
Oh, man. Yeah.
So I come off this high,
right.
And I'm like, oh, yeah. And then I hear that, and at first I wanted to be like, well, man, I need to get my numbers up.
You are a nobody. You are a nobody, and that's a lie. And that is a lie.
And that went through, but what it did is it's, you know, what I realized was it's just not yet. It's not yet. God has a plan. He's got some things that, and this is something that you taught me, man. Like, you know, there's things that I want quantity wise, downloads, listens, all these things. But until I'm ready and until God deems that I'm ready, he's not going to give it to me because I'd mess it up. That's probably one of the hardest things to deal with every day.
Yeah, no, and put a pin in that because I want to go back to the lie. Because a lot, you know, my wife says that we view things like through a keyhole as human beings. We only see a very narrow view.
Okay.
But we really cannot possibly have the perspective as human beings to see truly what's really going on. Okay. Yeah. And case in point, where we talk about quality, not quantity, I considered myself, and this is, I mean, not even going to go into why, a failure as a leader when I was a Marine officer. And for a number of reasons, the dumb crap that I did, and I can tell you 10 stories of how I demotivated people, and, you know, but what I didn't know was that some of the stuff I did, remember, by accident, changed like massively people's life. And I was on Facebook, and, you know, a lot of my Marines from my first unit are still on Facebook, and some of them spent 3 years in the Marine Corps. But there's this one guy, his name's Mulford. Remember him? He was his PFC, and he got in some trouble, right? And I went to bat for him just because I was like, this is a good guy. He screwed up. I'm going to protect him. I'm going to make sure that he doesn't get the book thrown at him and that he has one more chance because he did something stupid. I don't know what it was. And I get this text from him. I haven't spoken to him in like 30 years, you know, and he comes back and he goes, because I said something off the cuff about how I was a dumbass. There you go. That's not profanity. That's the truth. And he comes on private messages me and goes, sir, you changed my life. He says, back when I was a PFC, you went to bat for me. I am now, I think he's either master sergeant or gunner. He did a full career in the Marine Corps, and he really changed the lives. It wasn't me. I just helped him out once. So I didn't have that perspective. And sometimes you never will. Sometimes you will leave this planet never, ever knowing the true impact of your actions, positive and negative. You know, I don't want to know about the negative ones because they exist, you know, because I can remember the other time. I remember I came down, I got so insecure one day. We were on an exercise at 29 Palms, and Corporal Thompson, he was this awesome, his name was Chakotah Thompson, and he probably can watch this podcast. And this is my chance to apologize to you. You know what Chakotay meant? It was good, meant warrior. I'm like, oh my God, you're so cool. And he was good at what he did. He was, a forward observer. And, but I felt uncomfortable because I was a brand new second lieutenant and I didn't feel like I was running the show. And I took him, we were walking, and I said something to him. It crushed his spirit. I said something he'd done wrong, and it wasn't, he did anything wrong. He just wasn't giving me a chance to shine. It's so selfish, so destructive. And I had another lieutenant come and said, Corporal Warrior Thompson was like crying to me that you crushed his spirit, and that was probably like a low point for me. And so I remember those things too. And so I'm going to forget the good. I'm not going to keyhole. I'm going to miss some of the good. I'm going to miss some of the bad. Point is, you never, ever know. So that's a really long way around when we were talking about what? I don't remember how we got there. Now, I asked you to put a pin in something. Mm-hmm. What was it? You said, crap, this is me.
That's okay.
Now, we'll come back to it.
Yeah.
Wait, you were talking about, what was the thing before I got off on my speech about keyhole vision? You were talking about the guy who came down hard on you, said that you weren't big enough for him.
Yeah. Well, it's not, I understand. Honestly, like, I wouldn't say the name of the band.
Yeah.
But if I did, every single person has a memory and probably danced at their prom. And around my age or my generation or anybody's, everyone has a memory of this band. Every single person. There's not a person on the planet that doesn't know this band. So I understand that part. There was this feeling of inadequacy at that time. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, what am I going to do to get my listens, views, subscribers up now?
Yeah. As if you can do anything. Almost.
And then I settled in and I realized that, you know what? Again, it's just not time.
Oh, that was it. That was it.
It's
yes.
just not time.
Not time. We're going to talk about lies that you believe and then not your timing, because we got those two topics. First, talk about lies that drive people to make bad decisions. Mm-hmm. Lies we believe, like I was a bad such and such. Mm-hmm. We believe head trash. Yeah. And that head trash gets in our way.
Well, and I couldn't spep for anybody else.
I listen to my own head trash all the time.
Yeah. I could speak for it, and I think it's really, really simple. That, like, and my pops would say it, and you've heard me say it before, and it's just like, you're the greatest. Like, Craig, if you could, and this is in men's group or anybody who comes in contact with you, if you were able to step out of Craig for 5 minutes mm-hmm. and see the way that we all see you, right, there would not be 1 ounce of insecurity in your life for the rest of your life if you got 5 minutes of what we see.
But good and bad? Because, I don't know if you have access to the bad.
But
some people that are close to me do have access to the hardest, darkest, most selfish part of me, which we all have.
But I think we all have that part, and that's where the grace comes in. But I'm just saying, like, say, for instance, in your situation, I think it's a good thing that you're hard on yourself because you constantly want to be better. But for all of us, your absolute worst day is still an awesome day for most people. And so when I say that, the lie that a lot of times I believe, and I'm challenged with this, mm-hmm. is my pops would say, you're the greatest, son, so act accordingly. Mm. And at first, it was tough to hear that, because I was like, don't say that, because now, if I'm the greatest and I have to act accordingly, I then am holding myself accountable. No one else is holding me accountable. And that's, but the lie that I believe a lot of times is that I'm not the greatest, and it doesn't mean that I'm comparing myself to anybody.
It's like a balance, though. You got to be realistic with yourself, but if you let those lies drive you, because, who's the father of lies? Satan's the father of lies. He wants you to be depressed. He wants you to be so discouraged. Mm-hmm. He wants you to fail. He wants you to be so depressed. He ultimately wants you to kill yourself. That's what it is, I think. And I believe in God. I also believe there is a physical dark force. Yeah. And
me in my walk, I just don't really give them any space.
There's wisdom there. There really is wisdom there.
But that it could. Some people call it rose-colored glasses. That part has just worked for me. I don't suggest it for anybody else. Some people have called it head in the sand. But like, I joke and say that my brother's an attorney. Mm-hmm. Right? And so he scratches the surface. He wants to know that it's true. So if you told him that Superman was outside and he went outside and he wasn't there, my brother
said
would be
this
like, "You're a
before.
liar."
Right.
And for me, if I went out, I would be like, "He left." And so it's one of those things where I don't suggest this. It's just, it's what's worked for me at those times, because there has been so much trauma. There was a lot of trauma early on growing up, and it was the way laughter was a way for me to be able to cope with it.
Yeah.
And my mom helped me with that part of it. And I've got to a point where, like, even today, I was so frustrated, Craig, and I was going to call you because I know your son knows PS4 and, all these things. We could not sign out of the PlayStation account on my son's PS4.
Don't get me started.
And dude, I almost smashed the control. This is right before we came over to do this. And I sat and I was like, and I wanted to show my son a lesson. You got to do all this stuff. And then I was like, dude, it's PlayStation 4, bro.
Yeah, right.
Like,
right.
And that's when I'm believing the lie that, and I'm not saying I'm the greatest in the world. I'm the greatest at being me. That's what I was designed to be. And if I don't get that guy from the band, it wasn't my time. Yeah. If my business fails, I was supposed to be doing something else. If I lose my job, maybe I should be doing something else.
Do you learn a lot from your kids? I learned so much from my son. If I just opened my eyes and shut up. The other day, he lost his crap in over something so dumb, and I wasn't hard on him. I'm like, dude, it's just, what was it? Oh, it's just a Lego set, man. You can fix the tree that fell over. But he was like super upset, and I went out, came back, and there's this honest moment where he goes, Dad, I'm sorry. He says, I lost my shit. That's what he said, and I'm like, I was like so proud of him that he wasn't just like, normally you get a kid to say you're sorry. He's like, I'm sorry, so can I have what I want? It was just an authentic, I'm sorry. And when you get those glimpses of a child doing that, I get a feeling of what God feels. And I don't know what even that means when he sees us do something that he can be proud of, where he just gets joy. Yeah. When he sees you do something right or generous or patient or kind, it just brings joy to his heart. So I don't know. I asked you the question and then I answered it. Yeah, it's like, you learn from your kids because this is what I learned. This is another problem for me. Okay, so I'm going to ask you something else. We've talked about the best things in your life, the things that you would measure as success or accidental.
Is that a question?
It's sort of a statement, but you can respond as if it was a question. It's my first time sort of like being on a podcast.
No, you're saying, help me with the question.
Well, the question is like,
it's accidental.
I said it and you agreed with it, and you said something about it earlier about how the things that people would measure as a success in your life were accidental.
Well, it was a case in point. Like one of my friends, his name is Jerome Myers. He's a phenomenal guy, incredible in the real estate space, commercial real estate and investing, and he teaches people to do it at the highest level. He was at a conference with me called Secret Knock that I co-host, right? You went to it.
You invited me down for an afternoon. It was super awesome watching you on stage. It was really cool. It's like, I know him.
That's not why I did it.
No, but it was awesome.
I just wanted to share it with you, but I was with him and he's like, hey man, I've got a podcast. And I said, cool, I got a podcast too. We were talking about it.
Did you go, mine's bigger than yours?
No. And he was like, hey man, I've got a guy who helps to promote the podcast and it can help you. He said, I was like in the top 12% globally. And he got me down to, I think, 6 or 4%. And I was like, wow. And he's like, he's super expensive, but he works. I was like, cool. And he's like, would you like to get in touch with him? And I said, well, that would be great. And he said, before we do, let me check something real quick. He gets on his phone. And I think he's I don't know what he's doing, but he checks through and he's like, oh, he's not going to be able to help you. And I was like, oh, damn, like, I'm so sorry. Yeah. And I said, well, just out of curiosity, why wouldn't he be able to help me? Because I was thinking maybe he's too expensive or, or I just suck. And he's like, no, he can't help you because you're in the top 1.5% globally. Yeah. Oh, okay. And it blew me away, but it wasn't something I ever focused on. I didn't know about that. I wasn't trying to get a rank. Yeah. I wasn't trying to get a ranking. I didn't do it for the ranking. I didn't do it for the downloads. I didn't do any of those things. There have been times where I've got really focused on that though, Craig.
Okay, yeah.
There have. And I've got really down and I'm like, man, why is the downloads down or why is this? And then I start comparing myself and that's when I get off track. And then when I get back to it and it's the conversation that you and I had at the front desk and you said, it's not going to be an it, man. Like, it's already done. You kept telling me it's already done, man. It's just going to happen. And I was like, I wanted to choke you at the time. Because I was like, when?
Join the club. A lot of people want to choke me.
When, Craig, is it going to happen? When's it going to happen? But you were just very calm and knowing that that's what it was going to be.
You know, I'm going to call you out because I'm going to call myself out. What do you say to people when you're like, well, you know, you're with this rich people. I don't care about the money. It's like, yeah, it's easy for you to say because you've got a 9-number bank account, you know? And so, or like when I say, oh, I just like to go in the room and like, you know, enjoy the anonymity. Well, that's easy for you to say because you walk in the room, people know who you are. Or you're like, oh, I don't really concern my appearance, says Tom Cruise. You know, it's like, or pick your most attractive person, like Thor. You know, who's the actor that plays Thor? If I die, that's the guy that my wife's. She loves him.
You know what sucks?
I kid you. She loves me. That's the point.
You know what sucks with
I
Thor?
think Thor's attractive. I think I would date him if I, you know.
My nephew, his name is Cameron. A couple years ago when the Avengers came out and there was out of shape Thor.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
when he came on the screen, he yelled out, "Uncle Kelly!" And I was like, I don't want to be out of shape Thor to my. You know,
you mean like what is it, Naked Robber? We're gonna talk about Naked Robber in a second. But okay,
Robber.
So I was calling myself out and calling you out because you're like, well, you know, I remember what it was, but it reminded me of me. But I'm not criticizing you because I'm identifying with you. What do you say? It's easy for a person that's got plenty of money to go, I don't worry about the money. Or, you know, or it's easy for the attractive person to say, I don't care how I look.
Yeah.
Speak to that.
Well, I was going to ask you the same question because there's so many young people that will hear from, say, like a person like yourself, right? That says, do what is in your heart and like everything will work out.
Yeah, because you'll be like Donald Trump.
That's easier
that's maybe
for
a bad
person.
Yeah,
it's easier for a person to say that has had financial prosperity or had success in that area. It's a rough one, man. I mean, because like I think of, okay, if you can do something, we heard it this morning in Proverbs, work your land, you'll have abundance. If you try and chase fantasies, you'll be poor.
Yeah.
And so the hardest thing to ever do is most of the time the thing that you're the most gifted at. Because what you're gifted at is not shiny. It's not exciting to you. Like, I mean, say for instance, for myself, like when someone asked me about interviewing people and they were like, oh, did you take a course on it? Kind of. It took 30 years of seeing a person every 15 to 30 minutes sitting in a chair and me making their hair shorter. Mm-hmm. That was me learning to interview people. Right. And I didn't know that God was going to take that 30 years in the professional beauty industry and turn it into me being a host on a podcast and seeing events throughout the country and the world. If I would have known that, I would have messed it up because then I would have been like, hey, by the way, while I'm getting ready to do it. But I think that he builds us faith to faith, glory to glory. How do you do it? Because it's easy for you to say, just focus on your family. Just do this. When you're not a 23-year-old kid
just
that is building.
Just build computers in your garage. Bill Gates, you know.
And it's a great question. I don't know because it's a question that I've always had where do you hear many 21-year-olds that are in the struggle, that are in the grind, that are doing this stuff saying, well, none of this stuff really matters. Well, there are things that matter at that time, depending on the timing that you're working through on.
You know, this is going to sound I don't have a lot of contact with like younger people. My stepson, he's in his 20s. I do sort of, but I don't go real deep with them. I'd like to. Where I contact young people, I don't know, I'm a part-time sergeant with law enforcement. And my specialty is prisoner transport. I run a prisoner transport unit for the reserves. And I take a lot of prisoners to jail. And so I get a lot of alone time with some 20-somethings that are like at their darkest moment. And I think this is going to be an answer to the question, but the other day I had this guy, he was completely whacked out. In fact, he was wearing a paper suit because he peed himself, and so he's literally a mess. But I could tell he was super smart. I mean, and I talk to these people because it's my chance. They can't not talk to me. I mean, they can not talk to me, but they can't get away from me because they're a captive audience, right? And I just started talking to him, and I wasn't supposed to work that night. I was supposed to have my tooth pulled because it was day before Thanksgiving. I didn't get my tooth pulled, so I got to work that evening. And it's like midnight, and we're in jail, and he's wearing his paper suit. You can see he's like, leaves nothing to the imagination. And he was telling me his story, and I was listening to him, and he had his life super rough. And I told him, I said, you know what? And I'm honest. This is going to suck for a while. And he's getting ready to be extradited to Texas on a weapons charge. That he got stopped stealing a pack of cigarettes, but he had a warrant. He's going back to Texas. Now, you might ask yourself, weapons charge in Texas? Like, what, did he have a bazooka? I mean, like, nothing's illegal in Texas. That's my joke, but we said that. But I said, you can change your life today. I said, and I'm honest with you. I said, this is going to suck. You're going back to Texas. You know that. I said, this is a low point in your life, but it's up to you what you do with it. I said, and he goes, do you think it's going to work out? And I said, that's it. Yeah, it's going to work out. Just focus on, no. I said, you know what? I said, I can work out. You have the potential to make it work out. Mm-hmm. Okay. If you're on drugs, you can make the decision. Tonight's the night you're going to quit. I said, it's going to be hard, but you can do it. Will you do it? That's up to you, because he wanted me to tell him, yeah, it's going to work out, but I'm not going to say that. So I think honesty and integrity, again, it's something I'm still struggling to learn. I'm 52 and I'm going through it in a counseling / coaching program right now. Mm-hmm. And it's hard to put on that new set of clothing, to really just take time and be authentic. Because when he asked me the question, do you think it's going to work out? And I'm like, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's not what he wanted to hear, but it was the truth.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's...
Does that speak to what you asked? It's like...
It does.
Or did I just tangent?
No. It definitely did. And say my pop, right? Yeah. And I was always talking about my pop, but,
for good reason, I think.
My pop taught me a super valuable lesson in encouragement. Mm-hmm. And you saw this happen in men's group this morning. You saw Darren's whole demeanor change when he was encouraged, which tells me that he's not encouraged that much.
Yeah.
You get physically uncomfortable when I encourage you.
I do.
It tells me that you weren't encouraged that much.
You're actually spot on.
Okay. And so I've never met a person that couldn't be encouraged out of their situation. Mm. Now, this is hard because there's the Simon Cowell in me that's like, I need to break this stuff down for you. You know what I mean? You can't
Tough
sing
love.
And you need to get out.
Yeah, I'm Old Testament on you.
My mom was, my dad was an encourager, but my mom didn't believe in tough love. Mm-hmm. And here was the thing. And I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying this is what she helped me to see is she always allowed God to be the disciplinarian. And she would always encourage me that it was our job to encourage.
Justice is mine, says the Lord.
Yeah. And so, I've never seen a kid, and we said this in men's group the other day, like, I've never seen a person spoiled from too much encouragement, ever. I've seen a person spoiled from things that someone's trying to overcompensate for the lack of encouragement that they're giving to the person. But I've never seen that. Like, I believe, this is my belief, it's not, but I believe I can encourage you into whatever I see the potential in you to do.
Yeah, and I don't think your parents were ever the kind that would say, you can do anything you set your mind to, because that's a lie, isn't it? There's certain things you can't do.
There's a caveat to that.
Okay. Because I've heard that before.
Yeah, there's a caveat
pick that apart.
To it. It's that just because you could do it doesn't make it your purpose.
But there's some things you can't do, and so that's all. If
I can't be a rhinoceros.
Well, you also probably can't be president. It's logically possible that you could be the president.
Yeah.
I mean, look at some of the people who've become president. but there's an authenticity and an honesty when you say, look, you've got great talent, and you will go far setting your mind and your energies towards something.
Yeah. But I think it's tapping into also, like, Craig, there's things that you're innately gifted at, right? And inside that wheelhouse, there's really nothing that, like, if you wanted to start a landscaping business tomorrow, you could.
Yeah.
You could. If you worked at it hard enough, you could do it.
Have you seen the plants at my house?
And you could accomplish it and you could make it happen. Yeah. But does it mean that Craig should be landscape Craig? No. Yeah. So that's the part that I struggle with too, is because literally, like, sometimes I bang my head against the wall trying to figure something out, and God is like, bro, it ain't for you.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not for you.
Yeah.
So could you become proficient in it? But there are, I mean, honestly, like I said that one time. I was talking to fourth graders. And I said, you could be anything you want to be. And a kid stood up on his chair, no lie. And he said, I want to be a rhinoceros. And I was dumbfounded. Like, what do I say?
What are you going to say to that?
I just told him he could be anything.
Hello, thank you, honest person.
But you're absolutely correct in that assessment.
Yeah. Life is, when I say life is awesome, if you pay attention, there's so much in my life I have not paid attention. And
like what?
Well, I could give examples, but it's like,
what's awesome right now that you don't give enough like credit to?
That's a tough one.
You live in North County.
Yeah, my worst day is probably a paradise for anybody else. And I guess it's living a life of gratitude is so having that. Wait, sorry. I'm going to answer the question, but then I want to talk about encouragement. So I'm going to answer your question, but then remind me about encouragement because I'll forget encouragement, okay?
And if we don't, Andrew, just tell us.
Andrew, remind us to talk about encouragement and what the word means, please. But so, I mean, like, I really, at 52 years old, did not believe that I would be paying thousands of dollars for having an intensive coach in my life. Someone who and it's not a coach. I think he brings his name's Gary. He brings
Gary Gurian.
Well, he actually has a science base. It's science based. It's like it's neurology or whatever. Yeah. So I never thought I would be in a position at 52 to need that. I sorely needed it and wish I'd had it at 32 and 22. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of the same messages were offered to me, but I couldn't hear them until certain areas of my life hit rock bottom. And when I'm at rock bottom, it's when I can hear. Sometimes I think God will bring you to a place where you can clearly hear his voice, and it's those times of adversity. So I'm actually thankful for that. And it's hard to be thankful continuously for the hard moments, right? You always want to say, oh, I just won the lottery. Oh, I just got a promotion. Oh, what about the times, oh, I just got fired? Oh, and this speaks to anybody listening here, or to you or me. Oh, I don't even understand how someone can deal with a child that has cancer or something. So I'm going to go, oh, thank God my child has cancer. What am I going to get out of this? But so that's not what I'm saying, because that's another whole can of worms we can open up. I mean, when you say, well, God's going to turn this to good, it's like, well, you know what I mean? My child is dying. But if you can find joy, not in the situation, whether it's good or bad, but you just find joy in all situations. And that's a hard thing to do. There's a lot of ways to try to do it. That's where I think you can start picking up on a lot of the wisdom and blessing that God's laying down for you. And that's what I have missed. I've always complained in my head about being a victim. I still do it. I do it with my wife. I do it with my friends. I do it to myself, all someone else's fault. And it's so stupid because I miss the opportunity. God's got me in a place, often a dark place. He hasn't put me there, but he's allowed me to go there. And he is using that to transform me if only I will stop and listen and look. Mm-hmm. So that's part of the answer to your question. Now, Andrew, what were we supposed to talk about?
Encouragement.
Thank you, Andrew. You said encouragement, and you do spend a lot of time encouraging. And one of the things that I think should be a part of every small group or men's group or women's group is speaking life into people, because you don't get that a lot. Where it has to be authentic.
Let's make it though.
Yeah. Tell us what it really is first.
When you say you don't get it a lot, no one gets it ever. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
So and I could say that, like, as much as I beat my head against the wall, and for all of our guys who are in the men's group, like, and I'm not militant guy. I'm militant in business, like super militant in business, but I'm not super militant in men's group. But I could tell you this, and if you're a part of the men's group, hear me. And when you hear this. Every single one of you has seen a difference when you wrote a letter to your wife. Every single one of you. Yeah. But you don't do it.
Yeah.
And you say, oh, wow, I built up, and then I wrote one letter, and then I gave it to my wife, and she freaked out on it. Well, get her to not freak out on it by doing it every day. That's what we talk about. And when I say that, you could hear the tone of my voice. You see the feeling in my body. And when I say that, the speaking life part of it, most people run through life and they never hear specifically what they did right.
Right. And there are also sometimes these vague comments like you're doing great.
Oh,
or,
you're awesome.
You're
Greg.
awesome. Really? How?
You're amazing.
Yeah, that doesn't really reside with me. That
this,
doesn't. Yeah.
This happened to me because my daughter. I said, "I'm proud of you," and she said, "Why?"
And you're like, blah, 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 blah.
And you know, one like this morning when you spoke life to me, Craig, and when I spoke life to you, like I used your name. And when we first started, you remember, I used to get on you and use their name. And you were like, Kelly, I know their name.
Daniel.
So what's
I remember
his name?
that.
His name
it was like my
Daniel.
first day. I was like, Daniel. I was so lucky. I knew that one.
And so most people never hear their name and they love it.
Yeah.
Okay. If you're in the grocery store and someone yells out your name, it is the coolest thing ever. They don't hear their name and they very seldom, if ever, hear something specific, little that they did that really inspired you. And that is, speaking life is so simple. It's simple, not easy. But
because you want to be critical. I spend so much of my life trying to be critical with people.
And I coach kids.
And it sucks.
Well, I coach kids, and when I coach the kids, I can tell how they're raised. Okay?
How so?
The reason why is because I have them speak life. Every team that I've ever coached, I have them speak life to each other before practice and after practice.
That's cool.
Saying what they saw in the last game that they did great and what they did at the end of practice, what they did in practice. Almost every kid, and these kids would range from like 2nd grade up to 6th grade. Every time the kid would start off by saying, Jimmy, you used to not be able to catch the ball ever, but today you did good. I know exactly what his parents are saying to him.
What?
Jimmy, you always get D's and F's, but I'm proud of you today, kid, for getting an A. That kid did not hear being proud of him.
No, that was discouraging.
All it was the bad part. And so, but if we can, for me, and I believe this, my parents encouraged me, and that encouragement, watch this, Craig, caused me to look at my own inconsistencies and then correct them. And I became my own police officer.
We're back. Thank you, Andrew, to encouragement. Because think about the word. What is courage? I mean,
permission to try. That's what
it's like it's the motivation to do something, to rise to the occasion. Okay. And sometimes
that's why I have smart friends.
Yeah, I try to have smart friends too. Smarter in different areas, but courage is what people do stuff you don't expect them to do. Yeah. The person who had courage, they ran in front of, they took a bullet for somebody. Absolutely. They did something that was hard and right. Yeah. Okay. So when you speak words that encourage, you are helping them, giving them a foundation to be better. If you discourage, you are taking away their motivation, or their motivation's not the right word. But you're just robbing them. I mean, you're pulling the stool out from under them, so they're not going to do anything great. And so when you say encourage, it's helping somebody do what they can do anyway, just putting them on a firm foundation where they're not operating out of their own head trash, and they're working from a truth. Because you're not going to speak a lie with encouraging and say you're a very tall person when they're not.
I think that's the biggest part, is it's got to be truth. So Andrew and I experienced this today, and he'll nod his head here in a second, but we were having coffee, and I don't drink coffee unless I hang out with Andrew. Literally, I don't even drink coffee, but I sip on one because he generally has a coffee. He had orange juice today, but he was trying to one-up me. But we were sitting, and there was a woman walking towards me, and she happens to be my neighbor. Her name is Lee. And Lee, I don't know where it's at, but she looks like she's probably lost about 25, 30 pounds. And I haven't said anything to Lee in a while about it. But as she came walking forward, she was by herself, as a woman by herself. She's walking through. And I just said, hey, Lee, I just want to let you know, I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you've done, if it's working out or if it's eating. But I see the amount of work that you've done on your body, and I want to encourage you in it.
That's great.
You would have thought that I gave her $1 million, and she came over to the table, and then she started to explain to me about the things that she's doing and why she was inspired and all these things. that opens people up, but most people are not willing to encourage because they think that, like, I feel that it's because they weren't encouraged themselves as much. So they think of it almost as a limited resource. And I find that even when, like, I don't look like a normal guy. I understand this.
This is true.
When I'm on an electric bike on a sidewalk and there's a person coming towards me, I instantly put a smile on and I say, "Good morning, ma'am. Good morning, sir." And it changes the vibe of that person instantly, as opposed to them being like, "This weirdo is on a bike on the sidewalk."
Right.
It changes things.
Yeah.
And I think that if you can create encouragement, whether it be through a smile or whatever it is, but it has to be, like, it has to truly come from your heart. It can't come from technique.
Yeah. And like, you said something. You say so many smart things. I forgot what it was, but it was about encouragement. Well, keep talking and I'll think of it. But
I think specifically try it. Like,
I know what I was going to say.
Go.
Words, and it's I'm not. I wish I remembered the verse, but and maybe Andrew can look it up. It's like the paraphrase is: words do two things; they either build up or they destroy. There's no middle ground. You either speak. The power of words has the power of life or death. They're not neutral, or very rarely they're neutral. What color is the wall? It's black. That's not what I'm talking about. And so you have to be very deliberate with what you say. And when you talked about your neighbor, I have a niece that like lost a ton of weight. I mean, she lost a ton of weight, and she's on Facebook and she's posting pictures, and everybody's like, "Oh, you look great. Oh, I'm blah, blah, blah." You know what I wrote? I said, "Leah, I am so proud of you for what you did. Yeah, you look great, but I don't really care." I said, "What you did was extraordinary. I couldn't do it."
Yeah.
And I think she never got back to me but I think that probably meant more to her. And this is not me patting myself on the back. It's an example of how you can speak life into somebody. In a way that's not discouraging. Because if you say you look great, she's like, "What? I used to not look great," And it's all about the exterior. My comment to her was, "That's an indication of your inner strength." And that was one I got right. I've done it a lot of the other ways where I got it wrong. And I can, if you want me to, I can think of an example. I can think of a Chakotah Thompson example where I totally screwed it up.
Well, we studied Proverbs 31 many times in the past couple of years. And when you look at those things, God calls us to encourage on everything else except the beauty, and the beauty is last.
Yeah. And
it goes in line that way, but a lot of times we flip it around. But if you can, like, literally pick out something, what it'll do is it's not the encouragement. What I find, the encouragement is not as much for them as it is for you. What it does is it works on the condition of your heart, and it conditions your heart to constantly look for great things in people. And when you look for great things in people, you will find the great things in people.
Yeah. Why do as guys we always compliment someone's looks? Why are we all about that?
I mean, most of our stuff is external. Like, if you look at it, our external. This sounds bad, but I learned this.
I'm asking a question because it's me.
Think about men and women. Okay, so men and women, we think about sexual organs. Ours on the outside, theirs on the inside. Sex to them is an internal and emotional thing. It's an external thing for us as guys. I'm not a scientist, but that's a pretty simple scenario. And when you look at those type of things, I don't think it's bad that a man looks at the outer side. We just need to learn the other side. Whereas a woman doesn't need to work on the emotional side because she has it. But I could tell you women, if you cupped your man's booty while he's washing the dishes and said, "Wow, this feels great," I can guarantee you, and women, I've worked with you for 30 years.
Right, so
I know these things. And if you did that, women, your man would instantly change at that point, because we are more external. And when we hear, "Oh, you're sexy, like, feel those arms, man, have you done a couple push-ups?" Even if we've never worked out in our life, we'll be like, "Yeah," and you'll wake up tomorrow and you'll do some. But that, again, goes back to encouragement and expectation. Yeah. Whatever I expect you to do, you will do. If I expect that you're a piece of garbage, guess what you're going to show up as? Probably garbage or some, and garbage smelling kind of product. For our man out there, write your wife a letter. Like, I believe that every single marriage, everyone, Craig, every single marriage could be elevated to a crazy level if the man would wake up every single day and write his wife a letter, even if it's 2 sentences about what she did great the day before.
Yeah.
Every marriage on earth, everyone, there's not one.
Yeah, you're right.
And when I say that, that's the militant side. You can see it in my...
Yeah, you're like totally ready.
Right?
You take the hill, man.
But you'll do it when you're ready.
You know, you talk about these lies that you tell yourself, and something happened today. I would just tell you, my wife Denise, I'm sure she won't mind me saying this because it was.
I love me some Denise.
Oh man, so
I want her on the podcast.
She should be here. I come home. I decided I'm going to stop, and I'm thinking about some of this is really, and this is my authenticity. Some of this was for me. I admit there's this part of this. What I did was for me because I wanted, and so I got to be honest with that. But enough of it. I stopped at Vaughn's on the way home from small group because I was running late, and I knew I was going to be gone this evening. And again, I have to admit, if asked, part of it was just so I'd be like, not a get out of jail. She's not keeping me in jail. My point is I got her flowers, and she doesn't. I've never bought her flowers before because she's not that kind of woman. I got her a wrench bouquet once with these awesome wrenches that like lit her up.
Okay,
but I was like, and I didn't stop in to get flowers. I stopped in to get the salmon that I make really well because she likes it. I like it. It's healthy. We're going to make it and eat it for lunch. But I walked past like some, fall looking like flowers, and I'm like, I'm going to get the flowers. And I know she didn't like them. I brought them home. And she was like shocked. You know what I mean? And it's really, as I said, I did some of it for selfish reasons, but I also was like, it was like a version of the love letter. It's like, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to do something a little out of ordinary. And I think it may have made a statement. It may not have, but it was better than me just explaining why I was late and justifying, well, Kelly had to say 3 things before we left. And that's me. That's who I am. That's the guy. I want to rationalize it so I can minimize the negative impact in my life. And it's just not being fair to somebody.
I don't think that's.
And I don't know why I brought up this morning, but it was like
that's who you are, though.
No,
Craig.
but
That's
it's what
I would argue.
But that's the thing is what we do is not who we are, and some people will argue till they're blue in the face that that's not true. Liars lie. No, I lie, but I'm not a liar. Satan is a liar, but it's like. And that's not a good example, but
I would just say it's when you say that was you, I would argue with this, saying that it was conditioned. There's things that are born in.
Well, that I can tell you.
But watch this.
Okay.
If you were truly made in the image of God,
right, which I was,
okay, then anything that you say I am that's not in the image of God was from your condition.
It's a lie too. Well, that's the work I'm doing with Gary. And again, it's like I'm not the Yoda master at all about this. So when I talk about it, I sound like I got all my crap in one bag, Another word for that when we're not on a podcast.
Well, I think it's good because you, and you've never done this, you always come from a sense of I've never felt judgment from you. You have great wisdom, but you give the wisdom, letting people know that you're going through that thing. So it never comes off as judgment.
Well, it does and you're often harshest to the people closest to you and you love. So I can tell you that, yes, that's true in my circle of friends. It isn't always true. And this is not me being hard on myself, but this is me, the people I value the most, I'm hardest on. And you're like, dude, I don't even recognize. If you saw sometimes the way I spoke, man who thinks words build up and destroy, which they do, the way I would speak to my son or speak to my wife, you'd go, I don't even recognize you, Craig. But you wouldn't say that with disgust. You'd smile and say, Craig, that's not you.
Well,
and that type of rebuke would be encouraging to me,
Well, but you got to understand also too, this is a thing is for me, and it's not an ingenuine part, but genuinely I encourage people into the way that I see their potential to be, not who I see what they are. Yeah. And that's a part, there's times where I will get to have a conversation with someone that someone else won't be able to because, and I'm not saying one is good, one is bad. It's just, for me, I want to encourage that person to be who they can be. And when they see that, maybe they love the version, maybe they don't like it. But and when I encourage you, I don't think that you're perfect. I don't hold you to the standard of it. But I just think it's good because you do. You have so much greatness, man. You bless so many people, man. Like so many of us.
Well, you look at the life of David in the Old Testament. I mean, this guy was a disaster in his personal life. I mean, truly, and I mean, he's just terrible in his personal life. But God had called him a man that had a heart after himself, and I'm like, wow, that needs to be unpacked, because there's a secret there, and there's a wisdom there, and it's not on the surface. You have to scratch a little deep to get it, and I haven't fully worked it out yet.
Well, I think, if you look at it, like when he was a kid, he killed some lions, killed some bears, then God put him in front of the Philistine, he knocks out the Philistine. At that point is when David started to edge himself in, right? So he started to edge himself in. He started to see, hey, like me on the bike, wow,
I got this.
God, this is easy. And God is like, no, bro, you're on 5 on your electric bike. Yeah. And then as he continued on, it became less about God and more about him until he got to Bathsheba. And when he got to Bathsheba, it was all about him and nothing about God. And then God humbled him. Yeah. And when God humbled him, he had to take all that away to help him to understand it's about me and not about you. And I think that's the journey of every one of us, right? When we're growing up, and I didn't plan on having dreads. Then I get dreads, and it becomes the brand. It was a mistake on a plane on the way back from China.
Right, yeah. That comes down.
You look at it. Did you set out to be on Pawn Stars?
Oh, no, actually. And again, you keep bringing that up.
Did you set out?
No, because it's not. I actually think that's like a minimal part of my life. But no, I was accident, actually.
How?
I mean, well, it was an accident. Someone was helping me out with something. I had helped their son out, and a guy he introduced me to discovered what I did and said, there's a production company looking for something. And once I got there, I didn't even watch the show. And when I was there, they had something else to do. And they said, can you do this? And I'm like, yeah, I can do this one too. And they're like, you don't need to research? I'm like, no, I can do this. And it was literally, I recognized an opportunity and took it, but the opportunity I didn't create.
Okay.
So
you look at those kind of things. This is the way
I was babbling there a little bit.
No,
but
you weren't. But this is the way that God works, right? And then we get to a point where we think it's kind of a little me. And it's God, but it's a little bit of me.
Well, no, he wants you to. The thing is, you don't make your life. God makes your life, but he wants something from you. He wants you to help. He doesn't need your help, but he wants you, just like you want your son to carry some weight, because he's learning from it. And when he falls and stumbles, that's part of carrying weight. And so part of our journey is that God does ask us to take part. God asks us to do some lifting. Absolutely. And the wisdom, I think, comes in understanding that he doesn't need you. He wants you to be
the hard part.
He doesn't need you to do anything. He didn't need the disciples. He didn't need anybody. He didn't need Billy Graham. He doesn't need anybody.
He take the water from the rock, but when you look at that, that's it's the age old. If you look at all, like Jeanne d'Arc, right? Joan of Arc. Right. When you look at her story, and if you watch the movie, great movie, but if you watch the movie, the first time she goes into battle, she says, if you believe in God, you will go into battle. Second battle, she says, if you believe in God and me, you'll go into battle. The first battle, they won like undefeated.
Hands down, like everybody died.
Second one, half the people died. At the end of the movie, if you watch, and it's just a little that's thrown into the movie, but if you watch it, it's Mia Jovovich. At the end, she says, if you love me, you'll come into battle, and all of them died.
Right, and she gets burned at the stake.
And that's
how'd that work out for you, Jeanne d'Arc?
But that's, if you think about it, like this is the way I've seen it. It plays out in every one of the scenarios. Right?
Yeah, it does. The more you get involved, the more
it becomes a situation where you can't explain it. Your Pawn Star stuff, you can't explain it. It keeps going. When we start to look for those things, they don't show up. When we are not looking and we're just doing what we need to do, it doesn't mean you don't use systems. You're not smart. You're smart financially. You're smart in business.
But
that's the tough part. I don't know. I'm
going to put a pin in something and say it, because it's my answer to the thing I'm going to ask you. But if you have like one, you can think about it, because I'll tell you mine first. I'll tell you mine first.
Yeah.
Mine's keep it simple. In the Marine Corps, they have a term, keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
And people have systems and 12 steps, and you can't sell a book with like one thing, right? I told you that. It's like one of my favorite YouTube videos is the it's a Saturday Night Live video about financial peace or financial wisdom, and it's like the whole concept is don't buy stuff you can't afford. Period. And he goes, it's in the book. It's only one page long, but it's simple. And I think that if there's a thing that I can tell someone, because it's a thing I need to remember myself, is that if you just stick one thing, I mean, one or two things and try to do them well, it'll carry you far. It's when you have a 12-step program on top of a 6-step program on top of 6 small groups. I'm guilty of that. I go a lot, if you just do one thing or two things well, it'll take you far. So I say keep it simple. Simple answers to complex questions. Mm-hmm. My now question for you is, and again, there can be many, but right now, like if you had like one thing you were going to tell me or tell people listening, it's not going to sell a book, one sentence long. It's like, what would you say to somebody if they said, life sucks right now. What can I do?
It would just be what my pop said, like a broken record, and I would be mad at him the whole time when he would say it. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all else will be added on.
Amen, brother.
That's it.
Amen. No, that's it. That's it. That's super simple. Yeah. Put God first. What did I say that time in the podcast? And it wasn't mine.
Love God first.
Love God first. Love others best.
Yes.
And that's not me. That's Jason Graves from Daybreak, and he probably took it from someone else. Yeah, of course he did. But you know what? It's great wisdom. And Absolutely. If you can do that, and I fail every day, but I'm not going to beat myself up for it. I'm going to look back and go, yep, I didn't do that right. Tomorrow's another day.
My mom had a one-word answer to it.
Which was?
You know what it is?
No.
Shit.
That's great. Well, God's not done with you, and he's not done with me. I'm not dead, so God's not done. That's like, and that can be encouraged. That's self-encouraging. Man, I screwed that one up, and that's being authentic to self, being authentic to the person who you screwed it up with, and I don't do it half the time in my life, but the times I do it, it's a success. And if I can remember the time, if I can look back on the times during a day where I didn't do that, I'm like, yeah, I need to do that better next time.
Well, but I think the hardest part is it's cliche again, but it's the hardest part is to fall in love. This is what my wife always talks about. She's like, you never celebrate the result when you get it. But you sure as hell always talking about the process that you got to get there.
Process or product? One word answer.
Process.
Good.
100%.
I agree. Sometimes product is important.
Although I struggle with it because it's like, say with the podcast, right? So I start off with the podcast. The first episode didn't even had a mic in front of me, but it wasn't plugged in. Mm-hmm. I just wanted to look. Yeah. It was awful audio and it was awful, even worse video.
Yeah. And fake it till you make it. No,
and I started producing, and I got inspired by Ed Sheeran. And Ed Sheeran, he actually plays all the music, produces it, and he produces it live in front of you with no band. So he does everything. The background vocals, he loops it, he does the whole thing. I was inspired by that, and I was like, I want to do that. And I've never said this to people who watch the podcast, but I actually switch all of the camera angles while I'm having the conversation. So when that camera angle gets switched, or the guest gets switched, or I switch to a different graphic or whatever it is, I'm doing it on the fly while it's happening. Yeah. And so I was inspired by him, and I found that I love figuring out, like today, we've got switching between cameras, which we're lucky to have Andrew here.
Of course.
But all of those cameras are virtual cameras. Yeah. There's only one camera in here, and we've got 3 camera angles.
That's pretty cool.
Those are things that I like, the iterations. Yeah. And God I believe he's iterating me. Like, I feel like I'm an iPhone 1, and then he's going to drop the 2, and it's going to have a few bug fixes, and then it's going to be, I can't go from 1 to 15. It would freak me out.
Yeah,
I would like to.
Well, God does take people like that sometimes. Like he turned Saul into Paul, but he had a very specific purpose for it. It doesn't usually happen that way. So it's fair to say what you say is true.
That's where I get frustrated, though, because I want to go from 0
to 100
to 10 million in a day.
And you miss the process.
I always do it. And as much as I say I want to be in the process, I'm a human being, Greg. I like literally, like, God will give me a vision. Like, oh, he told me 5.5, 6 years ago, he said, it'll be a small theater. Then it'll be House of Blues, which will be 3,000 to 5,000. It'll be Mandalay Bay or MGM Event Center, which is 10 to 13,000. Madison Square Garden, which is 17 to 19,000. And then it'll culminate in Soldier Field, which will be 70 to 100,000 that you'll speak to.
70 to 100,000.
72, like, slash
Oh, okay.
100,000.
Oh, okay, I get it. 72. Yeah, got it.
Yeah. So
720,000. Is that what you mean? Almost $1 million.
70 to 100,000.
Oh, I get it.
In
Okay,
between that
somewhere
number.
in between that.
Yeah.
Okay, I was like, what?
Okay. So
You don't do math so well. Yeah.
When he said that, I instantly jumped to Soldier Field.
Oh, got it.
My wife said,
How do I get there?
It'll be it'll be an audience of 1, then it'll be audience of 2. Now the cool thing is I've already spoken at the small theater. I've spoken to 3,000 to 5,000. I've been at the Mandalay Bay Event Center on the stage in front of it, but God didn't allow an audience to be there, and He had me take a picture so I could see what the stadium would look like without the people in the seats. And He told me He'd fill the seats. I have not been to Madison Square Garden. I have been to Soldier Field, second row at Justin Timberlake and Jay-Z, and I know what 70,000 people looks like. But the way that He's going to do it is faith to faith, glory to glory. And by the time that I get to the 70 to 100,000 people in front of me, I will have I have killed so many lions, so many bears that Philistine in front of me won't be a challenge.
Wow, that's super inspirational. Now, what if you never get there and you only help 6 people? And that's the question. Are you okay with that?
I am. And I just think in my head, I'm an optimist. So I think in my head, Craig, and I don't know if I've ever told you this, but I truly believe that Oprah's going to call me every day.
That's awesome. Just like you said, Superman left. He was out front, but he left.
And I believe that when she doesn't call, I just think every day when she doesn't call,
awesome.
I just think her and Stedman had a lot of stuff going today.
That's a great attitude.
She was very busy, and it hasn't happened yet. And maybe it'll happen when I get to heaven.
Yeah. Could be. Maybe
it'll happen tomorrow. But the cool thing is my wife keeps me grounded, and that part doesn't define me. And I got really cool advice from a guy named Win Claybaugh. When I was starting the podcast, I was telling him all the people I wanted to go after and have on the podcast. He said, the one piece of advice that I would give you, son, is the person that doesn't have the light on them will make the most impact. So don't think that because you go get this shiny person, this movie star, he said, it could be, and this is what he was telling me, and Win Claybaugh is connected with everyone. But he told me, he said, it could be the father that helped his son out or the store owner, and local store owner, and make sure that you honor the heart of the person as opposed to what they've done.
Okay.
And I was like, at the beginning, I was like, yeah, whatever. I ain't trying to take that advice. But I see that to be true because the people, I have both. I have, Heisman Trophy winners and things like that. But I also have dads who are just awesome guys, and that's what I want to be able to expose.
Well, the tendency for guys is we want to go after the glory. You want to be in that, and I say the tendency for guys, I'm saying that like as you're laughing because
calling me out, man.
Yeah, but I'm calling me out too. Yeah. You want to be that star. You want to look good. We're not usually satisfied as guys being on the front page of section 6. We want to be on the front page. And it's like, I feel, and I don't do it often, but I do it sometimes, and I'm trying to do it more. If I can live for the moments where I help this X person that you'll never even know or hear about, that's where the moments, I think that's where the real glory comes. Every once in a while you get to be on that 750,000 person stage, just like I got to be on Pawn Stars for a short period.
70
slash okay. I'm worse at math than you are. Okay, I don't do math so well.
No, I'm talking like the capacity.
No, I get it. 70 to 100. Yeah,
to
that's huge.
That
is huge.
It could be 70. It could be 80. It could be 90. It could be 100.
Yeah,
that's
I had this like one of the greatest blessings in my life. Other than, okay, I'll ask you another one. What was the best day of your life? But what's the best day of your life? The best day of your life. You don't have to explain it. Just what was the best day of your life?
I don't know. Yeah. I can't, everyone would say like the birth of my child or when I got married or, things like that. But I mean,
if you could relive one moment, not because you do it better, but just because it was so awesome, reliving just a moment, what would that moment be?
My dad, right, like a couple of days before he passed away, he could barely even speak. He was in like a rehab center. Could barely move. He was in the bed, and I walked in and I saw him, and I hadn't seen my dad like that. And it was hard. And I walked in and I just burst into tears, and I fell on my knees at his bed, and I could see that he was like, "What, son?" Because he was used to himself that way. And he wasn't there for long, and I fell, and he looked at me and he said, "Don't worry, son. I'll always be with you."
Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. You have that moment. You still have it. Yeah. You don't have to relive that because you can just remember it. That's fantastic.
But then there's little things like going to Baked Bear in Pacific Beach right after we go to Brandy Melville with my daughter who's 14 who asked her dad to go. Like those kind of things. Riding my electric bike to pick up my son today and him riding on the back and us having a conversation while he's holding on to me in 6th grade at 12 and he still allows me to pick him up on an electric bike when most kids would be like, "You're a nerd, Dad.
Yeah, I'm too cool for school."
You know
That's
what I mean?
what they think.
So
Yeah.
those kind of things. And then even this morning this afternoon when we were walking up here and I see my wife and I'm like, I'm really attracted to my wife. Like my wife is smoking hot. Number one.
Not as hot as my wife.
Of course.
Yeah,
but,
of course. Yeah.
but she's smoking hot. She's amazing.
Of course she is. I didn't
And I
mean
just
that.
like to hang out with her and I love to see her doing her craft. And so that part I want to be able to relive. And, I've learned through with both my parents, checking out, that probably my favorite moment on Thursday is going to be when I land in Las Vegas and I get to hang out with all my buddies from 4th grade.
That's awesome.
And we hang out and we snap on each other and, I'm going to feel really insecure because they're going to be like, "Oh, your head is flat, you're blah, blah, blah." And now I'm going to be like soaking it up because I don't know, like for me, it's not to get morbid, but I don't know how, like based off of my family history, I'm 48, my dad was 68. My mom was 62. 62 is only 14 years away from where I am right now.
Remember the song?
That's wild.
Remember the song? It's later than you think. Period. That's all I got, man.
You good there, Andrew? Oh yeah, I'm chilling. Awesome.
Yeah, that was awesome. That's dude. It's a pleasure to hang out with you, Kelly. It's like every minute I spend with you is a good minute. And even if we have like the bad minute, it's still a good minute.
Well, I really want to speak the life to you, man, that like your actionable attitude and the way that you go about things, that's a huge blessing. Just the way that like the little drummer boy, right? It was his gift. He couldn't bring money, he couldn't do his stuff.
But he could drum.
Yeah. And you bring that action to life, but in a non-intrusive way. You inspire people to take action. Like when I hang out with you, like I know that I'm going to do a little bit more. I'm going to, when I knew you were coming to see the walls, I was like, dude, I came here at one night we got done with the production with my daughter. I came back here at 12:30 at night and worked until probably 2 a.m. because I knew you were going to see it the next day.
It's so cool to sit here. I mean, it's like this is the inaugural voyage of this room, and I think great things are going to happen here. I think great things are going to happen for people, for listeners, for you, and I'm super encouraged to see what happens. I don't know what's going to happen. Again, I do not know what's going to happen, and neither do you.
Yeah.
So, it's to be continued, man. It's awesome.
It.
Perfect. Peace.